Welcome to the G2 on 5G, the latest on anything related to 5G. It's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, Senior Analyst with Networking Infrastructure and Carrier Services, and joining me again from beautiful San Diego, California is Anshel. How are you doing, Anshel?
Happy to be back on.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. We'll do our Blitzkrieg, 6 topics in 15 minutes or so. I'm going to lead off the conversation and talk about Nokia. This week, they announced their lobby effort for Open RAN. And, this is interesting because I think Open RAN represents somewhat of a threat to the traditional infrastructure providers, not only Nokia, but Ericsson and Samsung. But, from my perspective, I'm sort of trying to read, the tea leaves here. They are the first big infrastructure provider to really throw their weight behind Open RAN. And I think there may be some motivation here on their part, given the discussions that are going on in the US within the rural parts of the country in the rip and replace effort with Huawei. And I think it's just sort of my, my hypothesis, but I think they might be, trying to position themselves, favorably to participate in that effort. I mean, do you have any insights or thoughts there?
Nokia is definitely in a position to benefit from it, compared to everybody else who is more of an incumbent. Nokia is still technically an incumbent, but I think that they're definitely in a position of less advantage, and I think they're looking for something to change up the landscape for them and give them an opportunity for more growth. And I think we both agree that, Open RAN has definitely been positive for them, at least in the short term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, they have had some roadmap misses. I think we've addressed that on other podcasts, and it's no secret that they're sort of the third fiddle, and, they're chasing their competitors. And there's also been a lot of management turnover recently. Their executive that was leading their private networking group, Nokia Enterprise, left. They have a new chairman of the board. They have a new CEO coming on board, if not already. And so, and none of that necessarily is negative, but there's a lot of change going on. I think this is an attempt for them to be super aggressive.
Yeah, having lots of executive changes is not great. Yeah, I think there's opportunities for them to, improve. And I think Open RAN is a big opportunity for them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's shift into your first topic this week, and you're our resident expert on AR, VR, mixed reality. And I know Qualcomm had a big announcement. I also read your article on Forbes, so why don't you take us through that?
Sure. So Qualcomm has been working on this XR initiative for quite some time. It's more around XR viewers, which are basically VR and AR headsets that attach to a phone. And they've been slowly kind of progressing this vision over the course of the last year to 2 years. They're kind of the leader in XR, especially when it comes to mobile XR. So there really isn't a better company to do this with 5G. And they've already been pairing this pretty heavily with 5G. It's actually their primary focus. But what's really happening is that they are getting carriers on board now. And the carriers are basically 15 of them have signed on to this program to either, adopt or have plans to adopt. Basically, they're on board to actually adopt these XR viewers and pair them with 5G phones. And the 15 operators they have are literally all the world's leading operators. You've got Europe, Asia, you have all the Chinese carriers, all the Korean carriers, all the Japanese carriers. You've got Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone, and I forget which one of the UK carriers. It's either EE or 3. I think it's EE. But in the US, they've got Verizon. So they literally, if you add up all the customers that those operators have together, it's like 3.2 billion customers. So it's a huge effort. And the way I look at it is they've got some really, some real momentum behind them now. And I think the operators are going to be the ones who really help them get it into people's hands. be they
Yeah.
consumers or enterprises. It doesn't really matter at this point.
Yeah.
But the key is going to be getting services to customers and getting them to understand the value proposition.
Yeah, and I think XR is a great showcase for 5G with respect to its improvements and latency and throughput. You touched on enterprise. I mean, obviously the consumer applications are evident, but I think there'll be some really, really interesting use cases in the enterprise. Especially, I've spoken about this whole notion of extended SME, which is equipping field service technicians with this sort of technology where they can more quickly diagnose issues and repair things, like if you think about oil and gas and
Totally.
even telecommunications. So Qualcomm is definitely a leader, and it'll be interesting to see how this sort of all rolls out. So let's shift gears a little bit. And my second topic this week is there was some news from a telecommunications alliance. They call themselves the Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions. Sounds very fancy. And they were recommending that the U.S. Begin its efforts with respect to 6G. And I read this and it was interesting. I spent some time with my alma mater, UT Austin, last year, and I know that their wireless user group is focused already on 6G and looking at implementing things like kind of radar technology. For the kind of the next G and the next step. But from my perspective, we're still very, early in the deployment phase of 5G. And I would argue that, there doesn't need to be a huge focus or emphasis on 6G. I mean, continue to do what academia and obviously others, like the big infrastructure providers are investigating. But I really think it's hey, we got to focus on 5G and get it out the door. So I don't know if you agree with that or disagree with that statement.
I kind of agree. I think it's okay to have conceptual discussions about 6G because you want to figure out what you're going to want to do with it. But the reality is that each G is about a decade, and each G takes longer than the last G to develop. So I think there's going to be a lot of things we'll learn from 5G that we will want to wind into 6G. And I think that takes rolling 5G out for it to happen.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of the discussions around what 6G could be, like terahertz related, a lot of those challenges are going to take lots of research and learnings that we take in from things we've learned about how to deal with 5G problems. So I think it's going to be a slow roll process, but I think it's starting early because people saw how long it took 5G to get to where it is, and 5G is not anywhere near done. So there's still a long way to go, and there's still lots of innovations to come out, and multiple more releases of 3GPP specs. So I think it's very early. I wouldn't put too much, resources or too much thought into it unless it's just conceptual, because we don't really know what we need in 6G yet. So I feel like that's kind of a hard thing to do when you don't really know what inadequacies 5G has yet.
Yeah, I agree. And if our viewers are interested, I wrote a Forbes article based on my visit with the University of Texas at Austin. Just Google Will Townsend Forbes UT, and you can learn more about what UT is examining with respect to their 6G efforts. So let's shift to your second topic. And we wore tinfoil hats a few episodes ago, and you have some news to share around an anti-5G USB stick. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So this thing is called the one sec. I have a whole OneNote doc with all the details, so I don't have to pull up the website again. It's called the 5G BioShield. It's a USB stick. Doesn't look like this. This is a mini GPU that I'm holding in my hand. A mini GPU shaped USB drive, but it's literally a USB drive that the UK government is now questioning whether or not it's a scam and whether or not they should be allowed to sell it, because they're claiming that for $350 for a USB drive with a little crystal or like a little plastic holographic emblazoned logo on it, It can block your 5G signal, 4G signal, Wi-Fi from your body. You can get one for $350 or three for $1,000, which is a
That's a
deal.
bargain. That's a
It
bargain.
uses proprietary holographic Nano-Layer catalyst technology. It has quantum oscillation through a process that reharmonizes the disturbing frequencies arising from the electric fog induced by devices. And it restores the coherence of atoms and emits life force frequencies. And I went in and read all the documentation, all of the research, finger quotes in the air, research. And they even have they measure your chakras and the energy coming from them with and without this device. And the kicker is, if you don't plug it in, it only covers a 5-meter radius. But if you plug a USB drive in, it has a 20-meter radius. So it can cover a whole home with one device, which I think is a great value.
I think that's a tremendous value.
But I thought it would be kind of interesting because it's possible that this thing could have a virus on it or some kind of malware on that USB drive. You don't know. It's not I mean, I think it's a USB drive. It looks like a USB drive. I don't know what content is on there or if there's any, but yeah, these guys are being investigated for fraud because, I mean, first of all, you can't block 5G, and one of the best claims is will this interfere with my internet connection? Because people use Wi-Fi at home, and they're like, no, it won't. So it protects you from the radiation of Wi-Fi, but it doesn't interfere with Wi-Fi, which
awesome.
Mentally makes no sense. But they call this the most advanced full spectrum quantum nano-layer shielding technology available to the public right now. So yeah, there's so many amazing words. It's an impenetrable shielding and harmonization of your home and family from all harmful imbalanced electric radiation, including 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and Wi-Fi.
Love it.
But yeah, I figured it'd be a fun thing to talk about because it's a continuation of these conspiracy theories that have been proven false, including our previous podcast saying that that 5G is dangerous.
Yeah, it's fun stuff, and I'll wait until they have a flux capacitor model to purchase my 5 for
to cover the whole neighborhood.
Exactly. So let's shift gears a little bit here, and my third topic this week is Huawei's back in the news, and this week the United Kingdom, their cybersecurity agency is scrutinizing the deployment of Huawei kits and gear. Within their networks, and this is obviously tied to the entity list, activity, and then recently the presidential order that is going to require silicon fabs that use American silicon manufacturing equipment to be licensed to sell the end product to foreign entities, including companies that reside in China. So I think this is another blow, to Huawei, and it's just like they can't catch a break these days.
No, and the thing is that the UK has been one of those few European countries that have held pretty steadfast for Huawei for quite some time. I think they did a really good job of creating a strong relationship with a lot of current and former government officials, but it seems like that has waned, and they no longer have the advantage that they used to have.
So it'll be interesting to see how this goes, but again, the drama continues. So let's wrap things up. Your third topic this week, you want to talk about a very aggressively priced 5G enabled smartphone, and then talk a little bit about the European Commission and what they want to do to accelerate the deployment of 5G.
This one will be a quick little twofer. So there's the Xiaomi K30i 5G, which is a cost-down version of a previous Xiaomi K30 phone. But what makes this one a big deal is that it's running on a Snapdragon 765G, which has a X52 modem, meaning that it's a 5G modem. So this is a $266 5G phone. Obviously, once it comes to the US with shipping and taxes and all that, it won't be $266 if you can get it. But in China, that's what it'll be selling for, which is an incredibly low price. And I think it really lowers the barrier for 5G on the device side and makes it no longer a premium only feature, and kind of washes a lot of those people who are saying that 5G can't be successful because it's only available in expensive devices. So I think you're going to see more of that this year, next year. 5G is going to be everywhere on every device, and it's kind of unavoidable. So whoever's not involved in 5G is going to fall behind pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I was at the Qualcomm 5G Summit in Barcelona last year, and Qualcomm talked about how they're going to support their roadmap to be able to integrate and offer 5G at the low end, the mid end, the mid tier, and the very, very high end device support. So this is all coming to fruition, obviously.
Yeah, they've been talking about this since like 2 MWCs ago.
Right.
But and then the other topic was kind of a quick one as well, that the European Commission is, as part of their analysis of the economic situation in Europe due to COVID-19, they see 5G as an opportunity, well, the acceleration of 5G, but they see 5G as an opportunity to, one, modernize the European economy, but also to increase the pace of the recovery by enabling 5G and modernizing the infrastructure in a way that makes commerce happen faster, which then can potentially accelerate growth faster. Did you have any kind of inputs on that?
Yeah, this isn't, dissimilar from, the US's focus on getting 5G deployed out and leveraging that as a competitive advantage on the world scene. I mean, when you think about the application of 5G with the low latency and the faster throughput into areas like smart manufacturing and smart warehousing, this could have a real demonstrative impact on the GDP of any nation. So I'm not surprised that the EC is throwing themselves behind that.
And the interesting thing is, I feel like in the US, because we have so few operators that cover the country, once all 3 operators have 5G out, it's already out. But in Europe, you have different countries, and each country has its own operators. I mean, you have a couple like Vodafone that kind of, cover the, cross barriers, and same with Deutsche Telekom. But for the most part, each country has its own situation. And as a result, I think they're trying to look to harmonize that a little bit better and maybe plug some holes in certain countries that don't have 5G or are behind. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting thing because it's related to COVID-19 and 5G and how they see 5G accelerating the economy.
Yeah. And, I've written about this as well. So I wrote a Forbes article June of last year, and I talked about policy and consortia. And the challenge in Europe, they've been, kind of chastised for being slow in their deployment. But you got to realize that each individual country has its own set of policies and regulations and requirements for the deployment of 5G, and harmonizing that in between countries when you start talking about use cases like drone delivery, autonomous driving, it creates a real challenge for them. So I'm not surprised to see that effort there. But hey, another great set of topics this week, Anshel. Why don't you take us home?
Sure. We hope that you, our listeners and viewers, found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide us with any insight on a specific 5G topic that you'd like us to cover for a future podcast, please reach out to us. We're on social media, on Twitter. Will is at WillTownTech, and I'm at Anshel Sog. We hope that you have a great weekend, and please tune again next week.